really dislike Jake Paul. Now, I don't dislike him. I understand him. I want to make something clear. I would still kick the living fuck out of him.
Andrew Tate just destroyed Jake Paul on live TV in the most humiliating way imaginable. Honestly, it's no surprise. Jake has a knack for surpassing even the lowest expectations. First, he chickened out of Andrew Tate's $3 million fight proposal, then had the nerve to drag Mike Tyson into a stage fight. Jake knew Tyson wasn't in his prime, but that didn't stop him from exploiting the legendary boxer for views and a paycheck.
He's allowed himself to become the biggest clown on the internet, and now he's famous, right? Because he's an idiot. But he has a bunch of money, so he gets...
And now, Jake's playing his next card, trying to provoke Andrew Tate into fighting him, fully aware that he'll never step into the ring himself. Why? Because Jake knows he'd lose. He's banking on Tate rejecting the offer, giving him the chance to spin the narrative and boost his ego. But Andrew Tate isn't falling for it. Instead, he publicly tore Jake apart, exposing every inch of his fraudulence on live television.
You only want to lose to them so you can say, well, I lost to Conor McGregor. Why don't you lose to an old man who's retired? I live in the real world, Jake. There's a whole bunch of fighters out here who live in the real world. Men who are dangerous and...
But Andrew Tate flipped the script entirely. Instead of rejecting the fight, he called Jake's bluff and accepted the challenge. And what did Jake do? He vanished, completely ghosting the situation.
But I would whoop his ass. But he wouldn't take a fight against me, because when he loses, I'm not nearly on his level of fame, right? So like, he lost to who? Whereas if he loses to Conor McGregor, it's no big deal. Well, he lost to Conor McGregor, who cares, right? That's what it's about.
Jake's entire strategy relied on Tate refusing the fight so he could spin a story about being the fearless warrior no one dares to face. But now that Andrew is ready to throw down, Jake is in full panic mode. He didn't expect this, and now he's backed into a corner with nowhere to escape. The so-called fearless Jake Paul is suddenly silent, proving once again that he's all talk and no action.
I'm not some washed-up UFC fighter. I'm not smaller than him. I would beat the living shit out of him, and if he wants to fight, I'll fight him any day of the week, and I'll fucking wreck him.
Tate didn't just challenge Jake to a fight. He delivered a reality check so brutal it felt like it should come with a medical disclaimer. He'd outright called Jake's career a joke and accused him of turning boxing into a TikTok-friendly embarrassment. It's hard to argue with that, especially when Jake's idea of competition includes a 58-year-old Mike Tyson. Speaking of Tyson, let's talk about how Jake dragged this absolute legend into his circus. Mike Tyson, the man, the myth, the heavyweight icon. Reduced to a content gimmick because Jake wanted to play tough, Andrew Tate summed it up perfectly. It wasn't boxing, it was elder abuse. Jake didn't see Tyson as a revered figure who revolutionized the sport. No, he saw him as a shortcut, a way to grab headlines without taking any real risks. And the worst part, he thought no one would notice.
However, I do understand what he's doing. I understand that he is very, very smart, even with his marketing angle. I'm just a YouTuber. You're not just a YouTuber. You're a full-grown man with the best coaches in the world who's dedicated his life to learning how to box for years. You know how to box. You're not a complete amateur. You know how to box very well. 3, 4, 5 years of training combat sports. You can box. The guy's not a jack.
But Jake's greatest masterpiece, his laughable fight history. It's like opening a box of fireworks only to find sparklers. He's fought retired MMA fighters who didn't even specialize in striking. Ben Askren, a wrestler with the speed of a snail. Tyron Woodley, a shadow of his former self. And Nate Robinson, a basketball player who looked like he'd never thrown a punch in his life. Jake's entire career is a highlight reel of low-risk, high-reward stunts designed to fool casual fans into thinking he's the next big thing. Andrew Tate ripped through that facade like it was wet paper towel. Jake, he said, if you trained half as much as you cherry-pick opponents, maybe you'd actually earn some respect.
Not just for YouTube. He is a young man training with Canelo and Ryan Garcia. When I made the video, I really disliked Jake Paul. Now, I don't dislike him.
Then there's the $3 million challenge. This wasn't a gimmick or some stage spectacle. It was a real offer. Winner takes all, no excuses. Tate didn't care about the money. He wanted to expose Jake for what he truly is. And what did Jake do? He ran. Not walked, not jogged. Ran. Here's the thing. Jake Paul thrives in controlled environments. His fights are carefully choreographed to protect his ego and maintain his narrative. He's the king of playing it safe while pretending he's risking it all. But a fight with Andrew Tate? That's not part of the script. It's a gamble he can't afford because it risks blowing up his entire brand.
$1 million. You put three, I put three. Winner takes all. You know my name, Andrew Tate. I will fight you any day, anytime. Let's fucking go. If I were to fight Jake Paul, I would take it completely seriously as a real fight, and I'd whoop his ass. I'd beat him. Jake, everyone thinks he's just...
Jake's rejection of Tate's challenge wasn't just a strategic move. It was a confession. A confession that all the bravado and trash talk was just that, talk. The self-proclaimed disruptor and game changer went silent when confronted with an actual threat. Let's not forget his loss to Tommy Fury, which was already the start of his downfall. Fighting Tate would have been the final blow, and Jake knew it. But here's the twist. Even without stepping into the ring, Andrew Tate's public takedown of Jake Paul did enough damage. It wasn't just a roast. It was full-on humiliation, a masterclass in exposing a fraud. Jake's TikTok followers and YouTube fans might still buy into his act, but the rest of the world sees through it now. Tate reminded everyone what boxing is truly about: respect, skill, and authenticity. Jake Paul? He's just a loudmouth who got lucky riding the algorithm. Andrew Tate's psychological warfare against Jake Paul was a masterclass in humiliation. Tate didn't just call Jake a clown. He dismantled his entire existence with surgical precision. He accused Jake of being nothing more than a kid playing dress-up in a sport he doesn't even respect. Let's face it, Jake's whole career is less about boxing and more about racking up TikTok likes. Tate's savage line, "Jake, your legacy isn't built on fights, it's built on TikTok captions," hit so hard that Jake probably needed an ice pack for his ego. This wasn't just trash talk. It was psychological warfare. Jake's paper-thin self-image cracked right in front of us. Jake Paul thrives on projecting a larger-than-life confidence, but Tate's relentless verbal uppercuts shattered that illusion, exposing his crumbling facade. Social media had a field day, exploding with memes and jokes that hit harder than any punch Jake's ever thrown. Platforms like Twitter and Instagram were flooded with hashtags like #JakePaulExposed and #TateIsShake, as fans gleefully roasted Jake for dodging Tate's $3 million winner-takes-all challenge. The irony? Jake, the self-proclaimed fearless fighter, was running faster than his own hype train. His carefully crafted persona as a fearless disruptor in boxing now looked as stable as one of his cringy post-fight celebrations. Let's not pretend this was just another day online. The backlash was brutal. Fans, haters, and everyone in between joined the pile-on. Jake, who supposedly earned over $40 million from his boxing career, found himself in a position no amount of money could fix. Memes branded him as a fraud, a runner, and, let's be honest, just scared. Even his most loyal fans began second-guessing their allegiance. Andrew Tate hit the nail on the head when he said, "Jake, even your fans know you cherry-pick fights to protect your brand." And the worst part, he's absolutely right. Jake's avoidance of Tate wasn't just a strategic move. It was a glaring sign of fear. Meanwhile, let's talk about Andrew Tate, the guy who walked away from this whole mess without breaking a sweat. Tate didn't need to step into the ring to expose Jake. By simply issuing the challenge and watching Jake fumble, Tate cemented his dominance. Fans now see him as the real deal, a fighter who doesn't need gimmicks or hand-picked opponents to prove his worth. This wasn't just a win for Tate, it was a masterstroke. He emerged as the beacon of authenticity in a sport increasingly dominated by YouTubers and Instagram influencers pretending to be athletes.
Two brothers, one cage. Jake Logan, you Tristan. Who comes out alive?
You know what? I'm trying so hard to not start internet beefs. I'm really trying not to.
You could say Jake and Logan, man.
Bro,
Don't worry about it.
No, I can't lie. I'm going through life. I'm trying to live peaceful now. I've got Fed agents in my house.
For Jake, this was a PR disaster. His entire brand is built on the idea that he's fearless and willing to fight anyone. Rejecting Tate's challenge blew a massive hole in that narrative. It's not just about dodging one fight. It's about what that dodge represents. A fight with Tate wasn't just a risky move. It was a direct threat to the entire illusion Jake has spent years crafting. And let's not forget his loss to Tommy Fury, which already exposed cracks in his armor. Stepping into the ring with Tate would have been the final blow, and Jake knew it. Andrew Tate's mic drop moment was the perfect cherry on top of this roast fest. Jake, you don't need boxing gloves. You need to stay on YouTube, where losing isn't as painful. Brutal, accurate, and so cutting it could have doubled as a knife. Jake's rejection wasn't just about avoiding a fight. It was an unspoken confession. Deep down, Jake knows he's out of this league. Tate didn't need to prove anything. His legacy is already solid. But Jake? He needed this fight to keep the illusion alive. And now, that illusion is shattered. The fallout from this debacle is something Jake might never recover from. His road to redemption isn't just uphill, it's practically vertical. It's no longer enough to hype his next fight. He'll have to convince a skeptical audience that he's more than just a YouTuber with boxing gloves. And let's be real, that's a tall order when even your die-hard fans are questioning your credibility.